Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is 3 Buck Theater. Today is June 25th, 2018, and I've got a good collection of movie news stories for you guys today, because there's a bunch happening on the Marvel front, one thing happening on the Star Wars front, and then another thing happening that I'm very cool with. So way back in 2001, we got ourselves a fantastic little stoner comedy called How High, starring Method Man and Redman, and it was actually a really solid movie that went on to spawn a TV series spinoff. Kind of. It's been 17 years since that movie came out, and Universal announced today that MTV ordered a movie sequel. That's right here. The stoner classic How High is getting a sequel. MTV has teamed up with Universal 1440 Entertainment for a non-theatrical movie follow-up to the 2001 feature film. This is great. I mean, look, I know we're in an area right now where people are going and the remaking and the rebooting things that ultimately don't need to be remade or rebooted. And usually I'm going to be on board with that. But just kind of like with the Legally Blonde news, I'm totally okay with them going back to those particular comedies. Comedies can find a new ground in a new generation, probably more so than certain adventure films or other franchises that were definitely built in a previous generation. How High will, if it does reunite Method Man and Redman, is going to be great, because they were awesome in that movie. They were fantastic in that movie. Although we don't really know what part they're going to play in it, because according to this article in the update written by Artie, Johann, and Shawn Ries, who both work for Family Guy, two young but business-savvy stoners embark on a pot-filled odyssey through Atlanta to find their missing weed, only to uncover a vast government conspiracy. Okay, so yeah, that's a little bit on the odd side. That's a little bit on the odd front. I mean, the first movie was about two stoners going back to college because they had great weed that will allow them to do very well on tests, and it was a dumb, stupid movie from back in the day. That was a lot of fun. This one seems kind of Harold and Kumar-esque, more so than How High. You know, two young business-savvy stoners lose their weed, they go searching through Atlanta for it, and they uncover a vast government conspiracy. I can only assume, and again, I'm just pure speculating here, that based on the location, Atlanta, is probably going to be the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and it's probably going to have something to do with some new strain of weed or something that gives people superpowers, or something that's going to be utterly ridiculous, but still in the same vein from the first movie, as well as probably Family Guy based humor. That being said, this is also going to be on MTV. So while the humor that was in How High will probably be more appropriate at MTV now than it was back in 2001, ultimately, all the swear words, all the pot smoking, all the titties, probably the titties, are going to end up getting completely boosted from the film. And that might be a little bit on the bad side. But hopefully we'll know more pretty soon. And hopefully it won't come across as a cheap cash grab, but one that has some substance behind it and can live up to the name of the reputation of the original 2001 stoner comedy. All right, so jumping over into Marvel news, because there's a fair amount of Marvel news, what we got right now. This interesting one we found out over the course of the weekend is that Spider-Man Homecoming 2 will in fact be titled Spider-Man Far From Home. And I thought the title was kind of dumb, to be honest with you. I wasn't a big fan. I know Tom Holland revealed it, and all the articles are like, did Tom Holland just spoil the movie? Did he just spoil the title? No, it is clearly a marketing ploy. I mean, clearly they're gearing up for Ant-Man and the Wasp. That's coming out in a couple weeks. The reviews came out on that thing, or at least the early reactions came out, and they're running high. So people are excited to see more with it. So why not talk more about Spider-Man? Because that, well, apparently starts filming here in just 2 weeks. So they're really gearing up to make sure that this movie does in fact end up being a big part of the of the news coming out of the next year. I think they're going to want to be very open about this particular filming process. Not to say that Spider-Man Homecoming was bad. It wasn't bad. It was a good movie. It tied in very well with the MCU. It gave us, a lot of Spider-Man in Infinity War. And we know that he clearly is going to find his way, back home to some point, and he's going to come back to life, and he's going to get his movie that does start 4 minutes after the ending of Avengers 4, whatever the title may be. And according to Collider here, it says that we do know that that Tom Holland is back as Peter Parker. Marissa Tomei is back as Aunt May, with Jake Gyllenhaal tapped to play Mysterio. There's also been rumblings that Michael Keaton will be returning as Vulture, which could potentially pave the way for the supervillain group Sinister Six, but that's all unconfirmed. I mean, look at the ending of the first movie when he met Scorpion in jail, and Keaton was alive, Vulture was alive. And also look at the Spider-Man PS4 presentation from E3, which dealt heavily with 5 of the 6 members of the Sinister Six. We know that Sony wanted to go down this path with Amazing Spider-Man 2, tapping Drew Goddard to write and direct Sinister Six. He has since been brought over to write and direct to X-Force. So we know ultimately Amy Pascal's plans with Spider-Man at Sony do heavily revolve around the Sinister Six. So yes, I would say that it's pretty good speculation to see that is going to be a thing when the movie actually launches next year. But also it goes on to say here that what we know officially about the plot line of Far From Home is that the story is going to find Peter Parker going abroad to Europe on a globe-trotting adventure. And that's really about it, because they shot the first movie in Atlanta, and then they're shooting this new one in Pinewood Studios in London, and they're shooting it overseas. I'm not going to lie. I'm not 100% sold on Spider-Man not being set in New York. I understand the desire to want to take him to different parts of the world. Civil War, the airport scene took place in Germany. I get that. In Spider-Man Homecoming, he spent a fair portion of the movie in Washington, D.C., so not being in New York. Avengers Infinity War literally took him to another planet. So obviously, Spider-Man has gone places that you wouldn't normally see Spider-Man in previous films go to. And so it does make sense to have him go on kind of a globe-trotting experience. But at the same time, it does feel very akin to like Superman Clark Kent, where it's going to be like, well, if Superman is over there, Spider-Man is over in Europe, where exactly is Peter Parker? And is no one going to be able to sit there and realize, like, I mean, we already know Aunt May knows, but anyone else that's going to be with him on this trip, if it is a class trip again or something along those lines, is going to find him, well, Peter's here with us. Oh, there's Spider-Man. And like, no one's going to figure it out. I just don't think people are that stupid anymore. So I definitely feel the movie's going to be good, but at the same time, I'm a little bit concerned because it does feel a little bit forced, to be honest with you. And I'm not a huge fan of things being inherently forced. But speaking of forced, and I don't know how true this is going to be overall, but in terms of if it's, I should say, acceptance, but I'm sure it'll be taken pretty well. Kevin Feige did confirm that there are going to be out LGBTQ characters in the MCU. And the thing is, this is one people have been asking for quite some time. We do know that in Black Panther, there was a lesbian romance that was cut. We know that there's been other gay characters that I think have been removed or toned down in these movies. I know that in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, there was an LGBT character that had her big reveal cut out for being gay, that announcement, and it's been kind of an iffy situation involving that particular representation in these films, and people have been asking for it, and I'm totally fine with that. I'm totally cool with there being other characters of other faiths, of other religions, of other backgrounds, of nationalities. I mean, look at Black Panther. I mean, after the success of Black Panther worldwide, and especially domestic, Kevin Feige will definitely be pushing for a lot more of these sort of things coming out, a lot more of these type of characters, because there is a market there that will in fact buy them, that will in fact pay for that will in fact enjoy those stories. In fact, this is what he said. When asked in an interview if they're getting gay bi LGBTQ characters out of the MCU, Kevin Feige says, yes. The playlist asks, that's the answer. Kevin Feige says, yeah, that's the answer. The playlist responds, it's not something we've seen yet, I'm guessing. And he says both. They say both. And he says both ones you've seen and ones you haven't seen. So what does that mean? Ones we've seen and ones we haven't seen. Well, obviously, Valkyrie from Thor Ragnarok, that was something that was also cut. That's what I spaced on before. Valkyrie was cut, her bisexuality was cut, and ultimately, the way I view these characters, again, I don't care, but I don't want it to be the character. I don't want it to define the character. I want it to very much be secondary to the story, secondary to the character. Have it obviously dictate and guide their experiences in the story they have to tell. Fine with me. If handled in the right way, it's going to be a great thing for representation. But when it's just tacked on for a tokenism or to check a box, it does a discredit to not only the story, but to the finished product and to that character and that particular representation angle. But unfortunately, when it comes to that type of tokenism, even though it's happened before, we oftentimes don't see much commentary on that from inside this particular community. So it should be interesting to see what's going to happen with that. But I'm very curious to know what's going to go on. And apparently Kevin Feige is also very excited to tell us that, because according to him, Marvel promises to be less cagey about the MCU plans after Avengers 4. Yeah, okay, fine. They're going to be less cagey about their plans. Now, what exactly does that mean? From what I can gather, he's more or less referring to the idea of, the title for Avengers 4. The fact that the cast members got scripts that didn't have the ending, or had, they got told wrong information, so they couldn't spoil it, even though ultimately with Mark Ruffalo and, he kind of spoiled the ending of Avengers Infinity War to an extent. He spoiled it like 2 years ago, I think as an offshoot joke, but it ended up being true. And then it's like, and Tom Holland has been known to leak stuff accidentally, probably just due to excitement. So there are going to be factors involved with this that are going to work against it in terms of trying to keep things a secret. But Feige, I believe, wants to make sure that this particular next phase is opened up, that people know what's coming down the pipeline. He just wanted to kind of have this first bookend be as clamped down as humanly possible. And we're talking about, like, the new characters coming in from the cosmic side of things, the fact that Disney and Fox have basically come to an agreement for the assets, which means the X-Men and Deadpool are returning home. They're probably, now that that's going to go through, at least once the ink has dried and the government's kind of given its thumbs up on it, we're going to get a wide announcement. I think what we're going to get, and I think they're already planning for, that big phase 3 announcement from a couple years ago, from 2000, and I want to say like 2014, 2015, whenever that thing happened. They, going up there to the El Capitan Theater and then putting that information out as a way to, get everyone excited for this is what's going to happen. And we're not going to see like the Inhumans taken off the docket. We're not going to see things moved around probably as much, because now with this next phase, with the next 10 years, Feige definitely has the rights to things that he wants. He doesn't have to fight in regards to get them. They're not going to shuffle things around. That is, unless Sony comes on completely and they end up, bringing certain things around. But then Sony will just produce those films, and that will be released through Sony. So that's going to be a thing as well, because we do know that ultimately Kevin Feige has made the claim that they're not against releasing 4 films a year, right? They're not against releasing 4 films a year. And I don't know if they're going to do 3 Marvel, studios and Disney, and 1 Sony, or some mixture of what. But if this deal with the X-Men does go through, which apparently, it's going to open things up quite a bit. And so the next 10 years of this particular franchise are going to be insane, right? Absolutely freaking insane. And I don't know about you, but I am more than down for that. And finally tonight, guys, this story should be taken with a 100% grain of salt, but if true, oh damn. Oh damn. Apparently, Ewan McGregor is reportedly coming back to play Obi-Wan Kenobi for episode 9. And this makes sense. Absolutely, positively, 100% makes damn sense. It really does to me. Now, we know all the crap going on with Lucasfilm right now. We know that it's been a thing. It's been a bad thing. We know that. With the movies being technically put on hold, but that hold is just to kind of reconfigure a few things. They're still in active development. Nothing's been canceled. Basically, they're trying to divert away from people that are out there going like, dancing around from maybe Johnson's trilogy being taken out or something like that. Obviously, they're trying to figure out a few things. And obviously, Kathleen Kennedy is definitely having to figure out a few things. But this rumor, if it's true, will basically, I think, do a lot to kind of like reinvigorate fans, right? It will do a lot to kind of get fans back on board, if for nothing else than the damn nostalgia factor, right? If nothing else than the damn nostalgia factor. But this is what the article says. Fans of Obi-Wan Kenobi have likely been focused on the long-rumored spin-off movie that is reportedly in pre-production. However, a new rumor claims that we will be seeing the character long before that. While many have expected Ewan McGregor to return as Obi-Wan if any spin-off movie is actually happening, this new rumor claims that McGregor is actually set to return to the role in Star Wars Episode 9. While this is pretty big news if true, it should be taken with a purest grain of sodium chloride you have at your disposal. This rumor from an unnamed source reported in The Sun, and while that doesn't mean that it isn't true, it also doesn't mean that it's by any means confirmed. However, the source claims that McGregor is set to secretly film for the next Star Wars movie, and that would be Star Wars Episode 9, not the Obi-Wan Kenobi spinoff that has been rumored to be the next Star Wars movie to follow the current trilogy. Well, okay. Let's take a look at that for just a brief second. If that's true, which big if true, it actually does well to kind of act as a backdoor pilot, if you will, for Ewan McGregor coming back as Obi-Wan, right? I think so. I really feel that ultimately this would be a good way for him to come back as Obi-Wan, to get us refamiliarized with the character. Granted, it's been 13 years since we last saw him in the role, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be fun to, not going to be good to see. And we already saw Yoda come back in Episode 8. So, he came back. It was a puppet from Episode, 6. And it was cool to see that. It was really cool to see that. It was actually one of the good moments in that movie, to have that nostalgia there. Now, we know that the Obi-Wan movie was reportedly happening. I just heard the other day that apparently Stephen Daldry had exited the project, so that might be one of the things that's in limbo. But if Ewan McGregor comes back as older Obi-Wan to instruct, Rey, or to help Luke out or something like that, because I'm sure Luke will be a Force ghost, if he's not once, revived by the midichlorians, considering what we learned about George Lucas's take on the next trilogy, what he wanted to do by going into the microbiotic world, it's entirely possible that J.J. Abrams will take from that and repurpose it for this. And quite frankly, I think that would just kind of wash away a lot of what we saw in Episode 8, to be honest with you. I think that would really, really, really help in the whole process. But we have to wait and see what's going to happen with that. But I do think that if it's received well, if Obi-Wan is received well in the movie, then they might go, look, we're going to kind of set this up as like, oh, we're going to do a prequel with him, but it's going to be actually Ewan McGregor, as a prequel, as opposed to Alden Ehrenreich playing against young Solo. So I do think that is ultimately going to be what they do here. It just seems to make sense from a marketing perspective, from also a market testing perspective. But that being said, anything could happen. I don't fully know, and I do really, 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 really want to know more, which I'm hoping we'll get soon enough. But yeah. That wraps up today's episode of $3 Theater. Be sure to leave your comments below. If you haven't already, please thumbs up the video and subscribe. But I do want to hear what you guys have to say about this stuff, these stories. Granted, there's a lot of Marvel, one Star Wars, and then How High, which I'm cautiously optimistic. But after reading that description, maybe not so much. Anyway, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Have yourself a great day, guys, and peace out.